Every Friday morning from 9 to 2 on the 5 mile this month. Yep. 9 to 2. Every Friday. So I'll be there. That's so fancy. And I started doing some power. Okay. Graduated. All right. Yeah, that'll be fun. Okay, good. Yeah, because I can send out the PDF. Is it not in the way? All right, we got good sound, good visuals. It's awesome. So the way I like to do this is usually I am a person who tends to present a tremendous amount of information. So just want to let you know that this is being recorded. So we'll have the audio, and I make a PDF out of the slides. So a lot of it is like you don't have to go crazy taking notes because you're going to get the audio and you're going to get the slides, and that really helps. Number two is I'm a believer also in taking a break about halfway through. So at about 45 minutes, we'll take like a 5-minute stretch because the brain can only handle so much. So I've learned that. So when you stretch it out too much, you get kind of overwhelmed and tired and too much on that. So that's the preliminary that I just want to talk about. So tonight's talk is, first I'll introduce myself, and my name's Peter Brodhead, and you may know me, of course, from being the co-owner with my wife, Janie, of Brighter Day for 41 years. So we started in 1978, and we retired on December 31st, 2019. I'm still doing things, working with the vitamin aisle and helping training the staff. And I'll be working on the vitamin aisle actually every Friday for this month of June from 9 to 2. So if you want to talk to me on the vitamin aisle, I'll be there doing that there. So a little background on me and cancer. I'm a certified nutritionist. And then I did studies in homeopathic medicine. Then I got really involved with my mentor in cancer, Donald Yance, who is among the most brilliant people I've ever known when it comes to cancer. And I just saw him last weekend in North Carolina. He did one incredible cancer talk and one on calcium that I might want to relay that in a course because it was amazing information. Donnie Yance wrote the first paper I read from him was back in 1999, and it was in one of the proceedings books for the Botanical Medicine Conference. And I said, who the heck is this guy? It's the most brilliant paper I've ever read on cancer and nutrition and botanicals. Still Mike there. Later, he came out with this book, Herbal Medicine, Healing, and Cancer. And I just gobbled that up. And then I started attending every seminar he did. And then in 2008, I went out to Ashland, Oregon, and did his professional training in cancer. So I went out in May and then in September for like a 60-hour work week. We were there for 6 days, 10 hours a day with incredible practitioners, Dr. Dwight McGee and Chanchel Cabrera, Jason Miller, Jonathan Treasure, another great British herbalist, and Donnie Yance. So I've been following his work, still have not found anyone to surpass what he does in his specialty. So, you know, the vast majority of my knowledge and information is really from studying from him, and a lot of what I'm having to present. So today we're gonna dive in, and we're gonna do some understanding about cancer and some of the mechanisms. But we're gonna do a lot on diet and a lot of what just applies on all these incredible compounds found both in foods and in botanicals, and how they can downregulate cancer issues. We'll go to the next slide here. So, of course, just basically what is cancer? And just in a nutshell, of course, it's where the cellular regulatory processes in the body go haywire. And what happens is there's mutations that happen in the DNA, and it can be caused by many, many things that happen. A lot of it's environmental, a lot of it's stress, a lot of it's dietary that happens. And so these cells suddenly lose communication with each other, and this communication system breaks down, and a cancer cell starts forming, and it follows its own rules outside the body. The real bugaboo about cancer is, and why it has been so difficult in treating all these years, is because it grows from us. Our immune system doesn't recognize it as an outside invader. And so it hasn't been until recently, with the development of the PD-L1 inhibiting drugs, which we'll talk about a little bit, how they work. They're not perfect, but they are a big advancement that got the body to recognize that this is going on. And so as these go, we'll be talking about a process called vascular endothelial growth factor, which is where a tumor can form, and it really can't do a lot until it gets a blood vessel network to come in and feed it. And then once that happens, the trouble really, really begins. Now, cancer is so complicated. There's so many things going on at once that every time they think they've got a handle on it, they go, whoa, there's another thing going on here. And so one of the more recent talks that Donnie gave, he said a single cancer tumor might have a completely different sets of drivers all over it. And so they think, oh, well, this is driven by the HER2/neu gene. It does that. Well, yeah, one part of it is, and then 6 other parts are doing 6 different things. So it just keeps, as they learn more, it just gets more and more complicated all the time on doing that. So let's go to the next slide. So there's some drivers here that are important to know about cancer. And so I want to talk about the P53 in particular, but the proto-oncogenes, these are the genes that are involved in normal cell growth and division, and they get altered and may become cancer. And so they allow the cancer cells to grow and survive when they're not supposed to. But the big suppressor and the big thing about our diet that's so important is understanding what's called the P53 gene. And this is what they call the guardian of the genome. And this is a regulatory gene that's always keeping cells acting normal. So it's looking over a cell and saying, no, you've got to behave this way. Don't go nuts. And so when the P53 gene goes off, then the trouble begins, because the controlling mechanisms of normal cellular behavior are breaking down on this. And we're going to go into the diet on the P53. I've got a whole section on that. The interesting thing is when you can do a blood work marker for P53, and the healthy P53 is called wild type. And you're going, really? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Like wild type should be the bad guy, but wild type is the good guy. So if they do a blood test and they're checking for P53 and you have a high amount of wild type, you're in good shape. But if you have a very low amount, your body is not in good shape for it allows the cancer to start the process of mutating and growing on that. The other two important ones are called the P21 and P27 gene. And these, again, are regulatory genes that keep things in control, working well. And the thing about plants, botanical medicine, and dietary, there are so many hundreds of incredible compounds that we eat when we're getting the right amount that they're always keeping these genes working correctly there. Next slide. So we have a whole bunch of different kinds of cancers, and I could go in and bore everyone with all those, but you have your carcinomas, which is found in the epithelial tissue. So that's like a mouth cancer right on the surface. Adenocarcinomas, which are found in the fluids and mucus glandular tissues. So they're found in breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer. Basal cell, we know about as skin cancers. Squamous cells, which are deeper below that, and you can have squamous cells in certain types of skin cancers, but also your bladder cancer, lung cancer, stomach, intestine, and kidney cancer. And then sarcomas, which form often in the bone and soft tissues. So if you have a cancer in the muscle tissue or fibrous tissue or bone, that's it. Next slide. Leukemia, of course, are the blood cancers. They're formed in the bone marrow. And what happens is the white blood cells start out. The body produces way too many of those and starts crowding out your red blood cells, causing anemia and all kinds of issues. Lymphoma, which is your lymphocyte, your B cells and T cells, which are also found in your bone marrow, but also is involved in the lymphatic system of the body there. Multiple myeloma, which is a form that causes the plasma cells in your bone marrow, and that gets inside the bone and starts growing inside the bone and causes bone fractures. Very, very painful cancer that can take like your spine and your cervical in your neck, and you start getting fractures and bone pains, horrible. And there's glioblastoma, which is your brain cancer, which is still probably the most difficult cancer that there is to treat on that. Extremely difficult. Okay, next. So we're born with, it's good to understand the basics of the immune system and how immunity works. So we have both what's called the innate immune system and we have the acquired immune system. So the innate immune system is the immune system we are born with. And it is the one that activates your primary thing that goes after viruses and bacteria and helps you out. And so the innate is what you're seeing when you're born. You get an infection, you get a fever, your macrophages are activated. It's part of what you're born with and how that your core immune system. Your acquired immunity is what happens when you get exposed to various viruses and bacteria and your body figures it out. And when it figures it out, it then has a memory that's there. And so the next time that virus comes after it, it remembers and it activates the immune response based on memory. So all your vaccines are all based on acquired immunity when you're doing vaccinations. So they're giving a person a small amount of that substance to activate a memory of the immune system to go after that on there. So it's the basic core thing. Okay, next slide. Okay, the P53. So this, the guardian of the genome. And what causes this gene to mutate? And it's basically, well, we have all kinds of things, but we have environmental problems. So we have heavy metals, we have chemicals in the environment, we have all the environmental assaults on the body, which damage our DNA that happen, but also just the, as I call it, the SAD diet, the standard American diet. So, whenever you're going and, when I'm at a grocery store, I'm just observing what people are putting in their shopping carts. And when they're filling it full of Coca-Colas and sodas with high fructose corn syrup, um, you know, you're buying, feedlot beef. You're buying big things of canola oil and corn oil or soybean oil to cook with. The food is sprayed. If you're buying, these commercial foods that are sprayed with glyphosate, Roundup, you have that. You have all these kind of processed foods. So all of these foods really, turn that P53 gene off, and this excess inflammation and all these sugars and not getting proper nutrition to feed the immune system are all taking us down the road to moving towards not having this kind of protection. And so you can just see it in the American diet, what's going on with all this processed food. So, the basic line is never eat anything that's got a whole bunch of names on the label. Don't eat anything that's made in a factory. Try to just stay with pure, real, authentic food when you can. And also look very carefully if you're eating meat, to look at grass-fed organic beef, for example. If you've got a cow that's being fed in a giant feedlot and it's being fed corn, which has been sprayed with Roundup, they're getting the Roundup residues in them. They're eating this corn, which is very high in inflammatory fats, the omega-6 fats, and creating inflammatory markers in the meat. Whereas if you're buying a grass-fed organic cow that's been eating nothing but grass, they're getting omega-3s, alpha-linoleic acid from the grass. Their fat in their meat is more omega-3, more anti-inflammatory. It's just one of the many examples. Now, the Environmental Working Group has a wonderful list that's called it's ewg.org, and they put out a list every year called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. It's a great guide because when you go on the site, you can download a little PDF and use it as a little shopping cart that you can fit in your wallet. And every year they analyze what is the worst, most pesticide-laden foods that you want to avoid and what are the least problematic of those. So examples of that usually are apples and strawberries are always the worst on that list year after year. Anything that's got a very thin skin, and then things like avocados, for example, corn on the cob, are very low on that list. They have a very thick skin on them. They don't have to spray them much because an avocado doesn't need a lot of spray. It's got a hard little shell on it that prevents that from happening. But a strawberry is very soft, and they come in and they'll, put malathion and every other kind of pesticide residue on there. So by following that, that's going to help right away, on looking at what you're doing. You're lowering the amount of those types of foods that are problematic, that are going to move your P53 in the wrong direction. So there are a lot of foods that will restore the P53, so they will heal it. I mean, one of the foods I'll talk about in a little bit is kiwi fruit. They found that eating 3 kiwi fruit a day repairs your DNA. It's amazing. I'll go into more detail on that, but a food that actually can repair that. And so the polyphenol foods we'll be going really into in depth tonight. And but you want to eat deeply pigmented natural foods. So the deeper the color, the more these antioxidant, anti-inflammatory compounds are in it. And so you want to use your eyes when you're shopping for produce and go for the deep, darkest, whatever you can find that's got the most incredible amount of color to it, because that is where all your antioxidants are. So your berries, of course, look at blueberries. There are now purple sweet potatoes, which have like 4 times the amount of these anthocyanidins as blueberries. I just got a wonderful present from Rob, some aronia, which I had this morning. It's amazing, incredible, deep pigmented, purple color loaded with anthocyanidins. But your turmeric, I mean, look at the color of turmeric when you're getting turmeric. It's brilliant, deep orange, yellow orange color. That's telling you a lot. Ginger, quercetin, which is one of my favorite things, green tea, the herb ashwagandha. I'm really big on people getting into learning how to make your own broccoli sprouts, because this compound here called sulforaphane is a mega thing for helping the liver detoxify chemicals in the environment. It has direct anti-aging, direct gene repairing. There is so much going on in the sulforaphane group, which are found in your entire broccoli cruciferous vegetable group on there. So if you want to really do deep dives into that, there's a great podcast with one of my favorite scientists on there, Rhonda Patrick, and it's a site called Found My Fitness, and she interviews the world's best scientists, and boy, does she do some deep dives that are fascinating. And sulforaphane is one of her big things. So you can buy, a pound of broccoli seeds and sprout it and start adding broccoli sprouts to your diet. An unbelievable powerhouse food that will do all kinds of work for you in anti-aging and liver detoxification pathways, and getting these estrogens out of our system, which we're getting from consuming foods that are in plastics. The scary thing right now is they're finding microplastics inside our red blood cells. So if they've gotten that degree, God knows what's going on. So we need to have as much protection as we can. We need to don't buy water in plastic bottles. Buy your stainless steel bottles. Get your own water filter. Carry it with you. Try to avoid that whenever possible on there. Apigenin family. You've got your whole parsley, celery family. A new superstar out there is the black seed. It's getting more and more popular, but the data behind it is incredible. Ellagic acid, which is found in pomegranates, raspberries. I also want to mention cranberries are not in there, but they're an amazing food that do a lot. Keeping your vitamin D levels up. Melatonin in the right dose at night can be very protective as an antioxidant and normalizes that. N-acetylcysteine is my favorite amino acid for activating the liver and helping the liver work with detoxification, because it increases an antioxidant enzyme called glutathione. And all your mushrooms, you just want to start eating mushrooms whenever you can, and just start adding mushrooms into your diet. The farmer's market is awesome. So you can buy, yesterday we ate lion's mane, which we cooked, which is an incredible one for the brain. And then we had oyster mushrooms tonight on that. And mushrooms are unbelievable for what they do. They do so much for the immune system. They have an amino acid that protects your brain called ergothioneine that cannot be cooked out. And they do so much in activating your immune system on there. Next slide. Other genetic things that are normalized, and these are big cancer mark regulators. You have the P21, P27 I mentioned earlier, sulforaphane again, grapeseed extract, milk thistle extract, turmeric again, and there's a natural compound called IP6, which is, there's been a lot of cancer research over the last 25 years really on that. P10 respiration, this is when this gene mutates, the cancers become aggressive. So you want to look again, and these things just go over and over again. So you have curcumin, quercetin, one of the richest sources of this compound, and we sell lots of quercetin during allergy season because it helps control mast cells, is capers. If you've ever used capers, they're wonderful, spicy little things, and you can put on like salmon. It's really wonderful. And a lot of different recipes you can use capers with. Capers are the richest source of quercetin of any food on the planet that's there. Your fermented soy, soy's gone through this up and down thing, but a fermented soy is particularly good. So miso, traditionally made tamari sauce. And one of my favorite ways to do soy products is tempeh, is exploring tempeh. Tempeh is an amazing food that's a fully cultured food that's there. So those are really good. Now eat cadherin. This is an important marker because when cancers are trying to grow, what they will do is they'll put out these enzymes that eat away at the tissue around them to try to get established in a new area of the body. So when your E cadherin levels are strong, it's like you have a resistance. You've got a strong collagen connective tissue thing that a cancer cell cannot attach itself to and spread. So the flavonoids found in tangerine. So whenever you're eating whole oranges and whole tangerines, always peel it by hand and eat the white pulp around it, and you're going to get loads of tangerine. Grating organic orange peel into food. There's D-limonene and all kinds of compounds in there. Here we go back again. Why is turmeric on here? Curcumin again. Fish oils are really good. GLA, which is an omega-6 fat that's very good for you, that's found in hemp seed oil, borage oil, and primrose oil, are things that work with that. And then NM23 is called the metastasis suppressor gene. This is a gene that keeps things under control. And when people go through surgery for cancer, often this gene gets down regulated, and cancers after surgery can often come back and be far more aggressive. So one of the things that I recommend if people are undergoing surgery and cancer is to take ginseng during that time. And ginseng has a remarkable ability to downregulate the cancer from coming back, but upregulate your own body's ability to heal. Because normally when you have a cancer, the markers that stimulate a cancer to grow are all turned on. That's like you're putting lighter fluid on it. And cancers then can come back and spread very rapidly. So you have curcumin, you have the red color found in tomatoes, lycopene. Paprika is an amazing food that you should just start pouring on things. It's loaded with lycopene. Watermelon's high in lycopene. So we're in watermelon season right now. All the deep reds, you want to go for those. And those, I've got a whole slide just about that. Vitamin A, citrus pectin, I mentioned quercetin, rutin, and then camphophyrol. That's a compound found in rosemary that's there. Next slide. So the big driver for most cancer is inflammation. And so when we talked about the sad American diet, every one of those foods on that list were highly inflammatory. So high sugars, high omega-6 fats. You just really want to nix all the omega-6 fats out of your kitchen. And what I recommend doing is throw out the canola, throw out all that. If you need an oil that's neutral tasting, that's really good, is you can buy avocado oil, very neutral tasting, but it has a fatty acid profile very similar to olive oil. You want to go crazy on extra virgin olive oil, eat tons of it. There's sort of unlimited on using high quality olive oil. And then I keep some coconut oil at the house, and then I make my own ghee, which is a clarified butter. So my kitchen is just, those 4 fats are all I use, because basically with those you can do anything. And then you're completely steering yourself away from the omega-6 route, and not having any of those in your system there. So it is the giant switch, and NF-kappa beta is involved with all inflammatory processes in the body. So it's aging itself, it's arthritis, it's autoimmune conditions, it's activated in COVID. When people are going through that and going through the inflammatory cascades, NF-kappa beta is the thing that turns on. It's the switch that turns on the inflammatory cycle. So it's involved. The major pathways that you have in the body is COX-2 and LOX-5 and 12. COX-2 is inhibited by fish oils, by turmeric and ginger, tons of those things. And LOX-5, there's another great botanical made from Indian frankincense called Boswellia, big down regulator on those. Terry Naturally makes a great product called Curamin. It's always been one of the top anti-pain formulas. It's been on the market for many years. He has a perfect combination of the turmeric and Boswellia in there. It's hammering both the COX-2 and LOX5 pathway, which is why people get such good results of that product. So it's down regulating this. So its inflammation is really bad. And there's a blood work marker we'll talk about so you can understand it more. You can get blood work done to find out what your levels of inflammation are. Again, we're just repeating over and over again these great compounds. What's the first one on here? It's curcumin, still beans. These are amazing compounds, resveratrol, and a compound called pterostilbene, which is found in blueberries, grapeseed extract, again, green tea. Feverfew is one of my favorite botanicals when it comes to when people have active cancers and they're going through chemotherapy. Reishi mushroom, holy basil, rosemary. Rosemary grows like crazy in Savannah. It's one of the easiest things that you can grow. An unbelievable powerhouse of a botanical. It enhances circulation all over the body. It helps the brain with memory. It's incredible for liver detoxification. It's directly anti-aging. It's high in camphophyrol. Everyone should start using rosemary regularly. Cape, an amazing compound. Rob knows all about this because he has propolis that he has in his beehives. Very powerful anti-cancer compounds are found in cape, which is found in propolis. A really great thing. Chaga mushroom is one of my favorite mushrooms to make teas with because it tastes like iced coffee when you make a tea with it, and it's high in betalytic acid. Again, cruciferous vegetables. Here we go again. And then you have all these other great foods: almonds, anise, basil, black pepper, caraway, cardamom, cashews, chili pepper, cinnamon, clove, coriander, cumin. On it goes. Garlic, ginger, all these things that are found on your spice rack is where you really want to just start really utilizing your spice rack. Your spice rack is a powerhouse of polyphenols, anti-inflammatory compounds that you want to use. Saffron, very expensive spice, but I want to mention it's an incredible oxygenator for the body. One of the things that when cancer is growing, is cancer likes to live in a low oxygen environment, with lots of blood stagnation. It's like a pond that doesn't have any exits to it. It becomes stagnant, and saffron increases oxygen to the whole body, helps blood flow. Of course, it's also a great antidepressant botanical too. Next slide. This is one of the big ones, and I like to talk about is VEGF, and I'll have a lot more data coming out because Donnie Yance just did an hour-and-a-half talk last week when I was at the Medicines of the Earth conference on VEGF, VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor. So when a tumor is very small, it cannot do much, but as soon as it starts recruiting blood vessels to feed a tumor, the big process of cancer growth starts. And so this is a process called angiogenesis. The big marker on this factor is copper. Now, copper is an important mineral that we use to help build collagen, good for our heart in that. But cancer will hijack copper, and it'll start grabbing on to as much copper as it can from everywhere. And people with cancer always have elevated levels of this mineral. It gets out of control. The cancer then uses the copper as a builder. It's like having a carpenter and bringing Home Depot brings all the tools you need to build a house. It's bringing all the lumber and everything to the cancer tumor and say, we're going to build a real great, strong blood vessel network to feed the tumor. Because cancer gets in the driver's seat and starts manipulating all these systems of the body to do its own thing. Meanwhile, because it grew out of us, the immune system is asleep at the wheel, and the immune system isn't recognizing that something bad is going on here. So there are markers that you can use. We'll go into the blood work. It's called ceruloplasmin. It's a marker for copper that you can look at. And the way that you control it is the mineral zinc and the mineral molybdenum drive copper out of the body. And there's always a ratio normally where you want to have, it's about 10 parts zinc to 1 part copper in the body. And many people, when they have active cancers, it goes the reverse. The copper goes up, and you can see it on blood work. And the wonderful thing about the blood work marker called the ceruloplasmin is it's a cheap test. You can get it run and you go, holy cow, this is out of range. And then you can aggressively just work on your own supplementation and through diet and bring that number down to a low normal. Now, I'm a cancer survivor myself, so I went through thyroid cancer, and I'm doing, extremely well now. Now, I did have to have surgery on it after a period of time, but it was a very, very successful thing. But one of the markers that I used really carefully was my ceruloplasmin. And I lived with a tumor for about a year and a half, and I was very careful, and I monitored like crazy with my ceruloplasmin. And if it ever changed at all, I would just call Donnie Yance up and go, "Hey, Donnie, do I need to tweak anything?" And I would do that. But when they went in and did the surgery, they were just kind of going they were like, "Wow, we were really amazed because we knew you had this thing for this long, but it didn't grow anywhere. It didn't take over. It was like very stable. It held it in its place." And we were able to do the surgery, and we were just, we knew normally people who've had it for this period of time, usually things metastasize, and mine just held encapsulated in one place. So all these compounds, again, you'll look at the list, but I'm repeating myself over and over again because many of the same thing. Your turmeric again, green tea, boswellia, fish oils, grapeseed extract, IP6, ginseng, resveratrol, milk thistle, ashwagandha. Hazelnuts are a really interesting nut because the skin of them has natural taxanes in it. And when people are going through cancer treatment with chemotherapy drugs, usually breast cancer, they usually always have Taxotere or a Taxol drug. Abraxane is a micro encapsulated. So if you're going through chemotherapy with one of those drugs, what you do is you eat a bunch of filberts or hazelnuts while you're doing that. And actually the natural taxanes found in the skin of that will enhance the effectiveness of the chemotherapy and actually make it work a lot better. So interesting compound that's found directly in that that's there. Another herb I'm going to mention on this VEGF inhibitor is Salvia midoriza. It's very inexpensive botanical. It's from China. It's a Chinese red sage, and it is one of the greatest blood movers of any botanical. It's not well known in the United States, but it's incredible for enhancing circulation through the body. And it's incredible for getting oxygen levels pulled up better, which cancer doesn't like. Does a lot of, there's compounds that are called tanchones, which directly inhibit the vascular endothelial growth factor. So it's a great one that's a very low cost. It's like $10 or $11 for a bottle or $12 a bottle. It's something very, very reasonable. Planetary Formulas makes it. It's one of the only ones that I can find, but it's a great botanical to know about. A lot of great use on it. Cancer causes blood clots. One of the things it does is it thickens blood and makes it want to clot. And so a botanical like salvia and fish oils and garlic and ginger and turmeric, all these things, saffron, all these things are blood movers. Rosemary, they thin the blood. They keep the blood moving. They prevent blood clots from forming that can happen. And many chemo drugs increase blood clotting. So when people are dealing with multiple myeloma, for example, the drug Velcade that's used in that, not Velcade, it's a thalidomide derivative, can be very effective at multiple myeloma, but it really enhances the risk of blood clots. So when people are undergoing chemotherapy, they really want to look at keep the blood moving and doing that. Next slide. Okay, the blood work, and this is stuff that we all can have control of, and we could talk to our physician about. And if they're not on board with doing it, you can go through. There's a lot of resources available now. Life Extension magazine has a blood work thing that you can order through them, but there's even less expensive one now. That it's become now to a point where actually you can go out and get your own blood work without even having to have a doctor write a script for it now. And I've got a couple of those places on my phone. Later on I could send you, but you can get a lot of these ordered. So I like everyone to get certain, not all these tests, but certain ones. I say one of the ones that I think everybody should get done is an omega-6 blood test. And the company that does that is called Omega Quaint, and they send you a little kit. Carlson Vitamin Company also does. And what you do is you just prick the side of your finger and you put a drop of blood on it, you send it in, and it will tell you the percentage of omega-3 versus omega-6 fats that are in your body. And it will give you the baseline that you want to work with to put yourself in the ideal place of keeping inflammation low in your body. Now, omega-3s, of course, are not only on the cancer issue, but we've got all the cardiac issues, and we also have all the benefits for the brain because they're incredibly, the DHA and EPA have been found to, help with your memory, mental functioning, depression, many other things. So it's a wide range. So really finding that you can tweak yourself by getting, using blood work to find where you're at and then tweak it with your lifestyle and your habits to get yourself in a really important place. Fasting insulin, another one I think everybody should get done because insulin is a driver for cancer, but it's also the driver for diabetes. It's the driver for obesity. And, the typical American diet does nothing but make insulin levels go crazy. So every time that you drink a soda that has high fructose corn syrup, not only is it driving your insulin crazy, but it's increasing your uric acid. And uric acid testing is just coming. It's been around forever as a regular test for people with gout, but now they're realizing that uric acid, when it's elevated, it turns on all this fat storing factors in the body. So it increases your cholesterol, moves you to getting fat as possible. Uric acid was set up by human. I mean, it was in mammals. Bears are a great example of uric acid levels. So in the summer, as it's getting closer to fall, bears start eating berries like crazy. Their uric acid levels go way up because it's a storage hormone. It makes them really fat so that they can hibernate and survive the winter. So anytime your uric acid levels are going up, it's increasing all these risks for diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease. So it's now becoming a really big deal in the functional medicine area. It'll probably take about 10 years for the regular medical people to realize that this simple test can tell you a whole lot. But it's all tied in with insulin levels. And we need to keep our fasting insulin as low as we can for so many reasons. The other test I think everyone should get done is a hemoglobin A1C, used mostly by diabetics, but it shows you where your blood sugar level is over a period of 4 months, 120 days. Really important marker that tells you. Now, the HSCRP is the inflammation marker, and it's a really good one, but you have to be aware of taking it at the right time. So I normally have a very low HSCRP. So this spring, I had my first head cold in years, and I had a big head cold. And I went to my doctor, who's great, who lets me do anything I want. She just hands me the book and just says, "What do you want?" And I just order all the tests that I want. I get it for an incredibly low price. I was coming off a head cold, and I said, "Well, I'm going to do my HSCRP, but I'm coming off a head cold, and it's probably going to be elevated, but I'm going to do it." It came back, and I had a horrible number, and I was like, "Holy cow!" So I'm going to redo it in July. But I knew that, if you're dealing with an acute thing, like you cut yourself bad or you bruise yourself or you're dealing with like a flu or a head cold or whatever, those natural inflammation markers are going to go up in response to that. So when you get an HSCRP, you want to be at a place like, I'm not sick, everything's fine, I haven't fallen, I don't have any bruises, everything's okay. Then when you get the number, it's going to be accurate and you can see where you're at. And then that is tied into the NF-kappa beta. And if your number is elevated, you need to really hone in on your diet and lifestyle and everything to bring that inflammation marker down. The LDH is sometimes just run on standard blood work, but if your tumor is growing, LDH numbers will start getting elevated. And LDH will also indicate the tumor is putting a lot of acidity into your body. And we'll talk about that a little later. Fibrinogen, a great marker to see how thick your blood is. Anybody with an active cancer, the cancer starts making the blood coagulate and get thick. So I use it as a marker to see where people are at when they have active cancers, but it's one that will tell you how thick your blood is. Homocysteine is one of the markers I do think everyone should get done because it's a genetic marker that a significant chunk of the population has a defect in this. And homocysteine is involved with liver detoxification pathways. And so it's involved with how neurotransmitters work. For example, if people have a defect in this gene, they might see a family history of depression in their family. There can be issues of earlier Alzheimer's disease. There can be issues with inflammation markers like osteoporosis and other things. A lot of markers. So homocysteine plays a big role in inflammation and how well your liver is working and detoxifying. Now, the great thing about homocysteine is this: it is incredibly easy to correct. Generally, if you just take a B complex vitamin, it turns on all the things that the problem with homocysteine, and it gets completely corrected, and then those pathways will start working. So I have a genetic marker from my father's side on homocysteine. He had bipolar disorder, suffered with terrible depression. I have to watch that, so I just did mine recently, but I was taking my B vitamins to see if they're working. They're working great on there. Vitamin D, everyone should get D, find out where they're at. In cancer, you want to get your number between 50 and 80. Vitamin D is a hormone. It is not a vitamin. It's a regulatory hormone that's handling hundreds and hundreds of different functions in the body. And so you want to make sure you're in a good level. 40 and above is for healthy people is generally a good level. But when I get in the cancer area, I really like to get people up to about 70 on looking at that. Because when that's in, it's like your fuse box is working and all the things below it are going to be working more harmoniously. And then we talked about the ceruloplasmin there. Okay. So that's an important one to really do. Exercise plays a huge role on everything. So we know it on cognitive functioning, we know it on just physical strength, but also in cancer. They found that people with cancer, when they exercise, the cancer doesn't grow as much, the cancers get inhibited. It helps prevent cancer. And part of it, is just everything is working. You're moving your blood, but also you're moving your lymphatic system. And your lymphatic system is filtering everything. Your lymphatic system is what holds all your macrophages and a lot of your T cells and a lot of the factors in your immune system are all hanging out in the lymphatic system. And when you are exercising, you are moving lymph. Really, really important to do. And that's why even doing, like, if you just have a little rebounder trampoline at your house, incredibly good for the lymph. Even if you're just standing there and you get up and, I can't do that on this, but just get up and jiggle. People, they're finding that, sitting is the new smoking. If you're working on your computer all the time, you should get up every 30 minutes and do some jumping up and down and doing that. Zach Bush is an integrative physician in Charlottesville. If you go on Google Zach Bush, the 4-minute exercise thing, he has this fantastic, really quick little video on YouTube, and you go on, and there's just 4 simple moves that you do, and it activates the nitric oxide pathway in the body. And they're just simple moves that you do these different things that you're doing. You're doing some squats, and you do a cycle of 4 of them. It only takes 4 minutes to do, and it will completely move your lymphatic system, activate the nitric oxide pathway for blood flow in the body, and it does tremendous benefits. So it's great for people that are working at computers or whatever, because you can do it in 4 minutes. You get up every hour and you do a 4-minute thing, you'll be physically fit and doing really, really well. So look at that, the Zach Bush 4-minute exercise routine. It's really fantastic. Next. The Mediterranean diet, of course, we hear about it, but it's, again, I'm just repeating this thing over and over again. It's a diet that is primarily loads and loads of colorful vegetables, whole fruits that are used, lots of nuts and fish, and lots of olives and olive oil. So, we talk about carotenes, colorful foods, polyphenols, because it's been found to help regulate so many functions in the body as a big anti-inflammatory diet on there. I'm going to mention a couple things about, Donnie Yance has recently found he's changed some of his opinion on certain things in research. And one of the things he's finding is he's not limiting people for eating whole fruits. He's finding that the sugars in those, because there's a lot about sugar and cancer, but when you're eating a whole fruit, you're getting all kinds of fibers, all kinds of polyphenols, all kinds of other benefits found in it. He's now saying that, you can eat, You don't have to think about that. You can eat fruits as you wish. And especially, you want to go for colorful fruits. So you got colorful plums, and you go after, peaches, and you got mangoes, and um, go through and eat whole oranges to get all these types of compounds. Now, I avoid American wheat in general, so gluten free when you can. But there are other grains that some people don't have a problem with, but it's worth exploring. So some of the ancient varieties of grains like Camus and spelt and einkorn. Spelt and einkorn came out of little villages in Italy and in Europe that were old ancient grains that were never hybridized, and they are easier to digest, easier to use. I use rye at home, and I buy the German. I don't know if you've ever seen the German rye. It's like very dense, thick bread that's sliced really thin. And if you're doing also sourdough process is a fermentation process that uses, it's like almost like a probiotic type thing where you're getting the sourdough process really transforms a lot of the grains and makes them more digestible. So you want to do that. Now, glyphosate and Roundup, one of the things they're using on it that we knew about GMO foods and spraying Roundup on it. And I'll do more on Roundup in a minute. But basically, what they do with Roundup now is they spray oats, wheat, and beans before they harvest it, because what it is, it's a desiccant and it dries up the grain. So the plant dies, the grains are left, and it's really easy for the farmer to harvest. So what we're getting now is we're getting oats, and it really makes me sick because of children eating oat cereals and everything in the morning are getting this laced with glyphosate residues. And glyphosate is an antibiotic. And I'll talk about that in a minute when we get into the biome on there. So you want to never eat an oat that's not organic, because they've been wrecked by Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, with Roundup being sprayed on that. So next slide. Okay, the polyphenols. And this is the word we all need to know. Now, I have this great table that I can email everyone, and it's the top 100 polyphenol richest foods. It's a really great resource to go after. The number one polyphenol by weight food on planet Earth is clove powder. It's really loaded with ellagic acid that are found in there. And you can just take little bits of these spices, cinnamon and cloves and all these, and put them in your coffee, or just stir them in a little beverage or whatever you're doing, and just keep those bagged spices open and using them. And so your polyphenols these are plants use polyphenols to protect them from environmental issues, from insect invasion, from all kinds of things. But these are very complex molecules. One of the big things is your biome, all your healthy bacteria. Polyphenols are what they feed on the most, and gives the gut health the most biodiversity in your gut. Very, very amazing compounds. Chocolate is one of the kings of polyphenols. Coffee is one of the kings of polyphenols. So in the morning, you can have your cup of coffee and have some 70% to 85% dark chocolate with it. Just go for it, and throw a little cinnamon on top of that, and you're having total pleasure while you're loading your body with polyphenols. Peppermint and spearmint are remarkably high in polyphenols. They're also really good teas to use in the afternoon because they perk your brain up. They're really good for mental focus when you need to have mental focus. But they're loaded with polyphenols. Rosemary and sage, again, great for brain and memory. Oregano is one of the most outrageously high polyphenol foods, and we look at oregano oil as a supplement for all the things that it does, and its antiviral properties and antifungal properties, and many, many other things. And it's these polyphenols. Why do you think elderberries are so good against the flu virus, and many people have been using during the COVID period of time? Why? It's that deep purple pigments of the polyphenols found in the elderberries that are so remarkable. Olives are ridiculous. Just eat olives because they contain hydroxytyrosols, these amazing antioxidants that will actually recharge your other antioxidant systems, keep working over and over again. Incredible for liver health, for liver detoxification, anti-aging effects, anti-inflammatory effects. So, olives should be, if you like olives, go for them in a big way. Apple cider vinegar, I consider that to be a superfood. It's I do that. I do 2 tablespoons of that every morning. It helps adjust the pH of your body so that you become more alkaline. It stimulates the production of hydrochloric acid in the stomach, and it will drop your insulin response by 50%. Incredibly good for blood sugar regulation. So if you want to regulate your blood sugar, you're diabetic at all, you should do a tablespoon of cider vinegar before each meal. Um, it's absolutely an amazing thing on there. So just the list goes on. And one of my favorite polyphenol teas to do is chai tea. So we can go to the next slide here. I think I've got, there it is. So in the afternoon, you want to get a ton of polyphenols. You can get any of these kind of teas. They taste absolutely wonderful, both hot and cold. They don't have caffeine in them. And you're getting a tea bag loaded with cinnamon, clove, cardamom, all these incredible polyphenol rich foods. They're some of my favorite things to do in the wintertime. I'm a big addict of Bengal spice there, but the chai rooibos is nicely relaxing on that. These are wonderful teas to add these compounds in your diet there. Lycopene, this is the deep red color found in paprika, tomatoes. Tomato paste is an amazing thing. And one of the things that it does that's remarkable in the area of cancer is cancer breaks down cell-to-cell communication. So a cancer cell is rogue. It's gone on its own. It's doing its own thing. It's putting all kinds of other mixed messages in the body. And lycopene reestablishes normal cell-to-cell communication. So it's taking a cell that might be moving towards a cancer cell and going, no, we're going to act normal. We're going to communicate with each other. We're going to go normal. So it helps to take a cell that's headed towards cancer and turn it back to a healthy, normal cell. So lycopene is remarkable. Tomato paste is one of your best sources of that. If you add a little black pepper to it, it will enhance its ability to work even better on there. And the big areas in cancer have been found in breast cancer research, prostate cancer research, and in pancreatic cancers. But it's an important factor to do. I'm going to take a little stretch break for 5 minutes. There's some great teas over here. We've got a honey bush tea that's non-caffeinated, so it's free. So go over and grab some tea. And Karen's over there with a lot of the different products that we've talked about, some in the talk. Okay, we're gonna gather back for part 2. We've gone through more than half, so it'll be shorter. Part 2 will be shorter. On there. Okay, so we are bombarded in the environment with estrogens, and they're coming at us. Number one, from plastics. The lining in cans called BPA, which they started doing in the late 1990s. They put a plastic liner inside of all the can products. People started getting this all kinds of estrogens. That's when fibroids in women just exploded. All these other hormonal dysregulation we're having from the exposure to plastics is really a big bad thing, and we're seeing this. And now plastics are all over the world. It's coming in the rain. It's coming everywhere. So we need to always be activating this process of getting estrogens out of the body, these excess estrogens that are there. So aromatase inhibition, aromatase is an enzyme that converts our DHEA, which is our hormone that is produced that helps us deal with lowering cortisol stress. And it's a mother hormone that the body can make both testosterone and estrogen into. But one of the fastest way that the aromatase enzyme gets messed up is from when we're have too much weight, especially belly fat. So when you see a guy with a huge beer belly fat, those people are converting their testosterones into estrogens really readily all the time. And so that's a big sign of someone with a situation of, and they probably have all kinds of other metabolic things like high uric acid and elevated cholesterol and elevated blood sugar levels and things like that. So getting these estrogens out is a very, very important thing, and always helping the detoxification way of doing that. Now, anyone with an estrogen positive breast cancer in particular needs to include foods that inhibit this enzyme pathway. But there are other cancers that are driven by estrogen. So lung cancers are, brain cancers are, pancreatic cancers to some degree are, and prostate cancer is often driven by estrogen. So working with those. So one of the most powerful foods that we can do, again, is the broccoli sprout thing, because it is an incredible source of sulforaphane that does that. But other foods that are extremely good to do that, one is flaxseed meal. Flaxseed's incredible in polyphenols. It's very high in compounds called lignans, and lignans will occupy the estrogen receptor and block it. And so lignans are really, really valuable for women with breast cancer. And they found that women with breast cancer, when they consume foods like a high amount of flaxseed meal, high in lignans, these lignans will help prevent the breast cancer from spreading, from moving to other parts of the body, and from growing. So flax is also a ridiculous food for your biome. Incredible, loaded with these polyphenols. And so your beneficial bacteria in your gut thrive in a diet that has lots of flaxseed. And if you've used flaxseed, it also is a great regularity promoter on doing that. Because it's lubricating, it's very soft. One of the foods also that I like is not necessarily estrogen doing that, but it's very good for your biome. But it's also really good in the hot weather, because I work at an organic farm a couple days a week, so I'm in the blistering sun, and that is chia seeds. So chia seeds are incredible to put in water, let them soak, and then when you drink them, they slowly release water into your body and help hydrate you in the summertime. So using chia seeds, put it into your juice or whatever, and when you drink that, it's like creating, instead of water just washing through you can't really absorb it, you get like this fiber that slowly lets you hydrate the body. So it's a super hydrator for the body, which is probably why the Indians in northern Mexico would eat a handful and they could run for 50 miles on doing that. So it's incredible for the biome, chia is. And it's also loaded with all kinds of polyphenols and antioxidants and everything like that. So it's a great one. So mushrooms, every mushroom is an aromatase inhibitor. And so it's blocking estrogens. So always cook. It doesn't matter what the mushroom is, even your white button mushrooms, your criminies, your portobellas, your shiitake, um, you know, oyster mushrooms. All of those are incredibly good at blocking estrogen. So really, really good food on doing that. So anybody that has an ER positive type of cancer issue they're working with, or they've got a lot of belly fat and they want to block it or whatever to get the, you're a guy with man boobs, use mushrooms. Chrysin, which is a flavonoid that's found in the carrot family. So it's found in carrots, parsley, and passion flower tea, which is a great tea for stress, a great tea for for too busy of a mind. It turns your brain down when you're thinking too much. Excellent for sleep, but it's also very, very high in a very potent aromatase inhibitor called chrysin, which is a flavonoid found in that. Next. The gut is so big on everything, as we are all learning. And there are way more bacteria in our gut and on us and in our around us than there are us. So the microbiome is more in the driver's seat on regulating functions of the body than the rest of us are. So they play a huge role in regulating everything: immune system, mood. We have all the digestion stuff, but so much of them are acting as intermediaries and they're feeding on polyphenols. So the more diverse the polyphenols in our diet, the healthier and the more diverse our biome is on doing that. Now, what's very, very interesting is the newest generation of drugs that are coming out called immunotherapy. They're called the checkpoint inhibitors. And what checkpoint inhibitors are, they've modified a factor that goes into the immune system and tells the immune system, hello, there's cancer here. We better do something about it because cancer evades the immune system. So it's like a lock and key thing. Well, only about 20% of the people who do immunotherapy respond to it. One of probably the most famous people that responded incredibly well to immunotherapy was Jimmy Carter, who had a melanoma that metastasized to his brain. He probably had an incredibly healthy microbiome because when he did the therapy, the cancer completely disappeared and he was in his 90s and gone. So they have found that there are a couple of specific probiotic species that can put you in that 20% responder area. And one of them is Akkermansia mucinifolia, which now is just starting to be available in a few supplements I'm hearing in the functional medicine front. But really, you have to really get it from your diet. And your richest food sources of this is pomegranates, cranberry, Concord grapes. And I have a list, I have a handout that I will email to everyone called Let's Get Cultured, because I've spent a lot of time on the microbiome and all the different foods that really help enhance the microbiome of the body, all the fibers, all the fermented foods, everything on that. And in it, I have a full listing of all the foods that help Akkermansia. Now, Akkermansia mucinifolia, the mucin part is something that creates a mucus lining in your gut, and it protects your gut from leaky gut. But it also it gives the microbiome a place to live in the gut. The other form is one called ruminococcus, and pears are one of the factors that really feed that. Pears are very high in this. And they found that people that had adequate ruminococcus, when they would get immunotherapy, it would work like magic on them. And they would just do a certain number of treatments and voila, it's gone. Now, I've written a handout all about immunotherapy. So if anybody you know is going through that, I did a lot of research on it through 650 slides that Donnie Yance did on that topic. And I distilled it all down to about 3 pages. And I give you all the little tools for the toolbox for helping that. So again, the handout I have really does a deep dive on that. It is really important on any cancer issue and for health in general to really feed the biome and really nurture our gut. Next. Okay, so I have just a little bit more. I mentioned about flaxseed meal. as one of the ones. Now, one of the other species that's really interesting is this one called FP. So let's see, Faecalibacterium pransnetsil. I never can pronounce that, so I just call it FP. It's a huge player because as a bacteria, it only makes up about 5 to 15% of your gut microbiome, but it activates your T cells and your cytokines to go after cancer and helps the immune system in general. So it helps IL-8, IL-10, IL-12, and helps with as an anti-inflammatory. In my Let's Get Cultured handout, I have a list of all the foods that feed this particular strain. So now that we're learning that there's certain strains that have these big effects just by modulating our diet in that direction, so we're feeding those guys, we're optimizing our immune function with that. And who knows how much else they'll be learning in the next coming years on it. But it was amazing to hear this between the responders and non-responders, that one of the key things was people who responded to immunotherapy were eating pears. And pears had this amazing thing that fed the bacteria that activated the immune system to help those drugs work on there. Next. So I'm a big promoter of fermented foods. So Sandoz Katz is a guy that's written a book several books about fermentation. And so if you just Google Sandoz Katz there, and I have all the links for it on my Let's Get Cultured handout. He's an amazing resource, and he has all these videos on how to make your own sauerkraut, how to make your own kimchi, how to do that. So you want to start including fermented foods in your diet. And so we have the soy group, which is miso, tempeh, tamari, natto, sauerkraut. I keep a big thing of kimchi and a big thing of sauerkraut in my refrigerator. Kombucha, using real sourdough bread, apple cider vinegar, and then there are a lot of dairy-based fermented foods that are incredible. Kefir is my very favorite. I call it yogurt on steroids. It has way more strains of bacteria that are beneficial than yogurt. There is a yogurt Brighter Day carries. It's called Bulgarian yogurt. It's made in Austin, Texas. It's fermented much longer. It's much more tart than regular yogurt. It's absolutely incredible. It comes in a glass jar. It's got kind of a maroonish top on it. If you like a tart yogurt, it is incredible. But it goes through a longer fermentation process, and I think it's the best yogurt on the market there. But a lot of your actually traditional cheeses are loaded with probiotics. Reggiano Parmesan is an incredible probiotic food. And hard cheeses, the lactose is fermented out. So if you're lactose intolerant, you can use Parmesan freely on your food and not have digestive issues. Goudas, the longer they're aged, the more probiotics. Your raw milk, cave-aged cheddars are really good. Stilton. And then Emmentaler Swiss is a great cheese that is got lots and lots of probiotics. And then again, we come back to cider vinegar, using cider vinegar on a regular basis. Next. Starches. These are what feed your biome, and very, very important foods that do that. And there's a compound in the large intestine that is called butyric acid, or butyrate. And butyrate drives the health of the large intestine, and it's very anti-cancer. It's very protective against colon cancer. Numerous things that happen with butyrate. Now, one of the best foods that you can do to feed butyrate is to make your own ghee. And making your own ghee is very easy. You just buy a pound of organic unsalted butter. One that's not organic, but it's the cows are raised grass-fed only. That's very good too. Is Vermont. Vermont Creamery makes an incredibly good one. And you just stick it on the stove. You put it on simmer, really low heat. You just let the butter melt, and then what will happen is the solids will come up to the top. The water goes to the bottom. When the solids come to the top, you just scrape it off. You're ending up with just a clear golden liquid, and that's your ghee. You pour it real slowly so that you don't get the water on the bottom, and you get the rest. You just put it in a jar, and you have ghee, and you can just stick it in it. It doesn't need refrigeration. Very, very stable. Cooks at high temperatures. Tastes great, and it feeds butyrate. So the other thing up here is Jerusalem artichokes. Jicama is another great vegetable the Mexicans use, and you can grate it. But also, resistant starches are incredibly good for butyrates. So if you're eating bananas and you want to get more resistant starches, eat them on the green side, and you'll get more resistant starches that are there. So a slightly green banana will do that. Believe it or not, potato starch is an amazing source of that. Also, if you cook beans and then you refrigerate them, the starches in the beans become resistant starches. So if you eat hummus, for example, that's a resistant starch, or a cold bean salad are really, really good. And those are incredibly good foods for especially your colon, your large intestine, and the production of butyrates. And butyrates um, activate a lot of Donnie Yance makes a botanical chemotherapy program that he does using artemisinin. And one of the things you have to do is you have to use activate butyric acid to make it work right on doing that. So just in general, having a high amount of butyrates is really good. There are fibers you can buy like inulin. Just if you're using them for the first time, use them really sparingly, because when you're bacteria really start taking over, you can become a farting factory for about a day or two. So go easy on there. Next slide. And this is just one of the greatest foods for your biome. It's so simple is kiwi fruit. Kiwi fruit activates Akkermansia. 3 kiwi a day will reverse DNA damage. That's huge. What a protector. It's a great regulator for the digestive system. It's really good for constipation. It's easy to buy, tastes great, loaded with vitamin C, all kinds of polyphenols. Um, I'm working with people that have undergoing radiation therapy. If you're doing radiation therapy, you want to repair your DNA as quickly as you possibly can. So I'm going to say you eat 3 kiwi a day when you're doing any kind of radiation therapy. So simple food that does a huge amount for the gut. And that the greatest gut bomb in the world, glyphosate. It's like a nuclear bomb on your gut. When originally what it used to be was a compound that they would use in piping material, because it would go through and clean out, chelate out all the bacteria in a pipe. And it was also would take metal residues out. What glyphosate does is it binds to minerals, so the minerals are unavailable to a plant, and then it works on a process that's related to glycine and messes up that pathway and kills weeds that way. When we ingest foods that are sprayed or have glyphosate residues, it goes in and kills all the bacteria in our gut. It's just like cleaning it out. It's like doing an antibiotic. So, when they started using Roundup on wheat, this is when we started seeing gluten intolerance. When I opened the store 40 years ago, it was only those people that had genetic issues with gluten. They had true celiac disease that had a problem. So we had a tiny little section for those few people. Suddenly, in the night, right around the year 2000, all this gluten sensitivity started happening. What was happening is people were getting leaky gut. They were losing their biome, and they're eating wheat products that were sprayed with glyphosate. It is a horrific thing and it's coming down in the rain in areas where they spray it heavily, like in Iowa and the Midwest, where they use a lot of it on corn, that it actually evaporates up in the sky and then comes back down in the rain. It's everywhere. So we want to do everything we can to avoid that. So you want to eat only organic beans, organic, oats. Um, we're still going to be getting tiny amounts on that. So we just have to do everything we can to build our biome. But it is a horrible product that's wrecking the world. Working with in cancer, of course, a lot of DNA mutation is coming from things like heavy metals. Cadmium is one of the big things that comes from cigarette smoke. Cadmium is a big promoter of certain types of cancers. Bladder cancer, in particular, is caused by high levels of arsenic. So where people are exposed a lot, that's one of the first places that happens. So we have brain cancers. We have all those environmental toxins. So we've just got to do what we can to activate that process. So if our gut biome is healthy, our liver is healthy, we're doing things every day on a sense of detoxification, very, very helpful on that. Walter Crinian was a physician who spoke at a lot of the conferences he went to, and he was his whole specialty was environmental illnesses. And he was blown away when he did some deep diving into research on how incredible the combination of turmeric and green tea together did on getting rid of arsenic, like mercury, cadmium, lead, heavy metals, chemicals in the environment, that they acted as absolutely amazing detoxifiers for that. Now, the minerals zinc and selenium are very, very important. Selenium and zinc will out what they do is they bind and prevent mercury from being accumulated in the body, and they help get mercury out of the body. So they're very, very important. And then my other big favorite thing to use for detoxifying is NAC, N-acetylcysteine. And that's an amino acid that's a sulfur-containing amino acid that raises the core antioxidant that your liver uses to detoxify called glutathione. It's a primary antioxidant for the whole body and helps it work better. NAC was the thing that they used in Japan back in the 1970s when they had a huge mercury spill in one of their bays, and all these people were poisoned with mercury. The Japanese use NAC to get the mercury out of those people. So it's a great tool for detoxification. Numerous anti-cancer properties, but numerous things just to keep your liver healthy and running and working really well. It's also a great mucus dissolver, and it was found incredibly well. And some of the research found in early stages of COVID, when the first wave came through, anybody who was taking NAC never died. It kept the lungs clear, open, really amazing. So I use it a lot as a mucolytic also. So it's a great tool for the toolbox using that. Mold exposure, horrible, and we live in a very moldy area. Incredibly dangerous toxins that come out of mold. So you want to always check for that and help the body detoxify. All these put an environmental load on the body, which then changes the P53 gene over and would be moving people towards cancer. Next. One of my very favorite ways for detoxification and acting in the body is hypothermia. So there was a cancer treatment that was done back in the 1920s called Coley's toxins. And what they did is they gave people with who had cancer this mixture of this bacteria. And what would happen is the body people would freak out, and the body would basically go, "Oh my God, this is going on." You'd get a raging high fever. What happened was people go through this very high fever, and then when they recovered from it a day or two later, they found that there were no tumors in their body. That it turned on the whole process of the immune system to go in, almost like immunotherapy, to go in and go after cancers. So when people have active cancers and you're increasing the heat on the body and creating an artificial fever, it's having big effects on the immune system and helping that. Now, saunas do so much more, because what you're doing is you're activating what are called heat shock proteins, and heat shock proteins have big effects on activating the immune system. They also have big time antidepressant effects. So it has big effects on the mood, big effects on maintaining better brain health, really good on the cardiovascular system, and getting plastics out of you. So getting BPA and plastic residues by doing the sweating process in saunas. It's very great for getting the phthalates and the BPA and the plastics out of you. So if you can do regular saunas, can have tremendous benefits. Rhonda Patrick, again, Found My Fitness, the PhD I mentioned earlier. She is a sauna expert. If you go onto her website, she has some of the greatest talks on the health benefits of saunas that are very, very good. Next. You can do your own thing at your house and have really good effects with detoxifying and creating your own artificial fever for activating an immune response. So using an Epsom salt bath, and you're combining it with diaphoretic herbs. These are herbs which open up the pores and help you develop a sweat. So they're great for helping you detoxify and activating an immune response. So you're just basically taking 2 cups of Epsom salts in a tub, You want to get the water up to about 102 degrees. You want to soak for 20 to 40 minutes. You can put a few drops of lavender oil in there. And then you drink a tea with yarrow or elderflowers and peppermint. Sometimes ginger will be a really good thing. And you sit in there and you sweat. The old herbalist, who was one of the great ones, Dr. John R. Christopher, back in the 1970s, used to do a process called the cold sheet treatment. And what he would do is he'd have people do a bath like this, and then he would wrap them in a cold, wet sheet, and you go to bed, put all these covers over you, like wool covers, and your body would be shivering like crazy. You'd develop a sweat, and what would happen the next day is when people would wake up, they would be feeling incredible. They'd take the sheet, and it was just full of all these weird colors, like all kinds of heavy metals and toxins and stuff that they sweat out that night, and they would wake up feeling incredible. So in a sense, you're kind of creating a cold sheet treatment by doing the Epsom salt bath. Great on keeping the immune system tuned up. Next, alkalinity. Cancer thrives in an acid environment, and tumors produce acid. So one of the markers on there, the LDH in blood work, if you have active tumors, the microenvironment around a tumor is very, very acidic. That happens. So a really important thing to do in cancer therapy, and also just maintaining good health, because alkalinity is very important in so many things. Alkalinity activates detoxification. It helps with your osteoporosis and helping your bone health, because when you are acidic, your blood always has to stay in a certain range of pH, and it'll take calcium out of your bones, put it into the blood to neutralize the acidity of the body, and then you're in a constant state of losing your bone density from doing that. So a good way to do that is just to buy what's called pH testing strips. They sell them at Brighter Day, or you can get them at drugstores. It's called nitrazine paper. And when you have your first urine of the day, you check your pH. You want to be right at neutral, right around 7 to 7.5. If you are acidic, then you want to move your diet and do things that will move you towards a more alkaline diet. Now, the key to alkalinity in the body is the more mineral rich your diet is in minerals, the more alkaline you become. So minerals are the key to alkalinity. One of my favorite products that I like to use is from Trace Mineral Research. They make concentrate liquid minerals that are taken from the Great Salt Lake. And I use them a lot in the summer when I'm sweating a lot, but also they're very, very alkalining for your pH. And they supply you with like 90 trace minerals. They taste terrible. They're really briny, but you can dilute them way down, and then you don't notice it if you have it like in a mild thing of water or tea, or I just take it in a small amount of water and get the job done. But when cancer is growing, the tumor produces lots of lactic acid, which lowers your pH. And you can do things with compounds called bicarbonates, which are like baking soda-like compounds. You can get a potassium bicarbonate, and you can do bicarbonates, which will move the body much more quickly to an alkaline state. So in active cancers, keeping your pH can play a huge role at limiting tumor growth and pulling the rug out from underneath the cancer, because you're creating a microenvironment that's not friendly towards its growth. It's like you're doing everything. You're getting oxygen, and you're getting blood flow in. You're regulating all kinds of functions. So you're basically just trying to bathe your body in a sea of all these great polyphenols and all these compounds. Intermittent fasting and autophagy. This is a really, really valuable process to do periodically, or you can do it even on a basic daily level, or do it several times a week. And autophagy happens when you are in deep sleep, and also when you are going without food for periods of time. And what happens is when you stop eating for a period of time, your body will take, the first thing it'll do is it'll start self-eating. But what it does is it takes the garbage first and eats that up. So it takes the misfolded DNA. It takes cells that are called senolytic cells. These are cells that are just taking room up in your body, but they're not doing anything. So it's kind of like trying to get on a crowded subway, and you're trying to get somewhere. You're in New York, and you're trying to go somewhere. The subway's really crowded. When you're doing regular fasting, your body eats up these senolytic cells, gets rid of them, and then there's more room for healthy cells to work. Also, rebuilding your mitochondria. Your mitochondria is the energy producing parts of your cells. So when you're doing autophagy, you're cleaning out your mitochondria and making them more efficient at creating more energy on there. So it's a very, very good thing. So there's a lot of great data coming out on time restricted eating. And time restricted eating is really pretty simple to do. The basic rule is just this: you eat early for dinner, you don't eat late, you don't eat anything after dinner. So, say you quit eating at 7 p.m., you go to the next morning and then you just wait till 11 in the morning to eat again. And you've gone like 16 hours without eating. During that period of time, the body has had a break and it's gone through and it's started the process of autophagy. Also, several times a year doing 48 to 72-hour fasts can be very, very good to kind of reset the body. There's so much good information coming out on intermittent fasting and time restricted eating now. It should definitely be considered as part of a healthy program. Also, the other discovery that's been understanding is that when you go into deep levels of sleep, which is called the delta system, they have found that there's an entire lymphatic system in your brain, which they've named the lymphatic system. And it's like a wave that goes through your brain and cleans out all the metabolic debris and waste in your brain. So it keeps the brain function working better, helps prevent Alzheimer's, would probably be very good on helping prevent glioblastomas, brain cancers, and keeps the brain functioning much, much better. So this is a lifestyle hack that I think can be very, very valuable. Next. And then mushrooms again, just amazing on how they work and what they do. A big part of what mushrooms do is activate the biome, and you have all kinds of different compounds. You've got beta glucans, which is a type of fiber found in mushrooms, and what they'll do is, mushrooms being from the fungal family, being a fungus, the body looks at them in a completely different way. And so when you're eating a mushroom, the body looks at the mushroom and goes, this could possibly be something that I don't know if it's good or bad for me. But the healthy mushrooms, and what in essence is what they're doing, is they're turning on your natural killer cells. They're turning on the T lymphocytes, and they're activating a much stronger immune response, is one of the big things that they're doing. So your lymphocytes are activated, your macrophages, your T cells, your dendritic cells, and your cytokines and natural killer cells are all being activated by them. And so you have the beta glucans as one in the bitter tasting mushrooms like reishi mushroom. We have, there it is. So your reishi mushroom, which you'll see, these and lion's mane often grow out of trees, and you'll see them coming out of a tree. And if you see mushrooms coming out of a tree, usually that means that tree is probably going to be dead in the next year or so, because the mycelium are going through all the wood and digesting it out. So usually it's a sign that a tree's on its way out. Have any of you ever seen hen of the woods mushrooms? Really beautiful, bright orange mushrooms. They're very delicious. And you'll see them on a tree, and then usually a year or two later, the tree's gone on. But the terpenes in this give reishi a very, very bitter taste. But reishi is an extraordinary mushroom. They call it the emperor of mushrooms. Incredible for activating the immune system. It's really good research in the area of prostate cancer, breast cancer, really pretty much any kind of cancer that out there really as an aid. And I often will recommend that people rotate different mushrooms when they're going through cancer therapy to keep activating different responses, or using complexes of different ones. The chaga mushroom, which grows out of the birch tree, looks almost like a cancer itself. It's a very strange, black, really, really weird looking mushroom. I've seen them growing up in Michigan in the birch forest there. Makes actually a really good tea that tastes like iced coffee when when you do it. And it has betulinic acid, very, very good in the research that's been done in melanoma. The maitake mushroom is called the dancing hen mushroom. That's an absolutely delicious mushroom that you can often buy in markets, and it's absolutely delicious to cook. Really, really good tasting. Shiitake mushrooms, again, great on immunity, great for also antiviral properties. One of the most delicious mushrooms that you can use overall. So they all should be, I believe in using a variety of them. And I always am cooking with all kinds of different mushrooms. HCC is a unique compound that's made from a shiitake-like fungus that comes from Japan, and it's used in all the hospitals in Japan for people undergoing chemotherapy. And we were invited in 2013 to go to Japan and went to a conference in Hokkaido, Japan, in northern Japan, in Sapporo, and saw all kinds of scientific papers that were done presented on AHCC. So it's kind of expensive, but it's also a remarkable compound on there. So there's a lot to explore in the area of mushrooms, but anytime they really should be added into the diet. And also in cancer therapy, you can go after some of the other ones that aren't so good tasting, but they're done in supplements, like the turkey tail mushroom. The turkey tail, there have been over 200 human clinical studies done on that mushroom in Japan. And so it probably has the highest amount of human clinical studies that have been done of any mushroom, because in Japan, they look at it as a regular treatment when people are undergoing cancer, that if they're undergoing chemo, they will include mushrooms in their program there. Okay, next. And one of the baseline botanicals that I think should be used, like, as a just a regular thing on an everyday basis, is the Chinese herb astragalus. Now in China, they'll take the roots and they will boil them up, and they'll use them as a base when you're cooking other foods. So if you were cooking a pot of rice, they would put astragalus roots in it. And what would happen is the medicine coming out of the roots infuses into the food you're eating, and it becomes food as medicine. So in China, they do it for like stews and soups and rice and things like that. Astragalus is a good tasting herb. You can buy it in powder form. It's very mild tasting, but it's a really core thing for helping core immunity. It is really, really good when people are undergoing chemotherapy, because it helps rebuild the white blood cells and the cells in the bone marrow to protect themselves and to recoup. There are so many numerous benefits of astragalus that are there, that it does. It's just a remarkable botanical overall. When people are undergoing immunotherapy treatment, astragalus is a very, very beneficial thing, because in immunotherapy drugs, what it'll do is it activates, of course, the immune system to go after the cancer, but often it will stimulate the immune system. And one of the side effects of that drug treatment is autoimmunity. Astragalus will regulate that from happening. And it also, in many chemo drugs, they're very damaging to your kidneys. Astragalus protects the kidneys, it protects the liver, it helps the immune system in general. So I consider it to be one of the most important daily tonic kind of botanicals for supporting immune system. So it's like mushrooms and astragalus are a real foundation on doing that. Next. Turmeric, of course. I call it the emperor of botanicals for its anti-cancer properties, or the anti-cancer superstar. And over here on the left, you can see this little wheel, and that's cancer growth factors. There's over 100 of them. Every single one of those cancer growth factors is inhibited by turmeric. So it's working pleiotropically on all kinds of systems simultaneously. And number two is the research that's coming out now on black seed. Black seed is becoming the new turmeric. Black seed has remarkable anti-cancer properties. Again, pleiotropic. It's just all kinds of pathways that it's working on. These are two very, very, very powerful tools when it comes to doing the support for that. Next. And then your resveratrol. These are still beans I mentioned earlier. Resveratrol, again, works on almost as many pathways as turmeric does. It's a remarkable compound that original research done with it was used for its anti-aging effects on that, but it's got numerous effects in the area of inhibiting cancer and also working really, really well in enhancing the effectiveness of chemotherapy drugs. And grapeseed extract is very similar to resveratrol in the numerous things that it does, but it's also very, very good on strengthening the blood vessels. It passes the blood-brain barrier very well. It's an incredible antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and these are all some of the superstar single ingredient things that can be part of a program that can be very, very supportive. Donnie Yance, in his formula called Botanical Treasures, he basically is putting turmeric, resveratrol, grapeseed extract, green tea extract, and now he's put black seed in it. It's been his newest thing. Next slide. Green tea, of course. Green tea works very synergistically with turmeric, and so you get an effect when you put them together. You get a 1 + 1 = 3. But one of the big things that green tea does is it stimulates cellular suicide in a cancer cell. So it stimulates apoptosis. A superfood of the green tea group is matcha powder. So it's like green tea times 4. So matcha powder can be put in smoothies. You can make your own matcha with it as a single ingredient, but it's a very, very powerful tool. And quercetin is my other big favorite. I've always used it for its anti-allergy effects, but it's anti-inflammatory. It's a mast cell stabilizer, and in the VEGF, the vascular endothelial growth factor, when the body is trying to make blood vessels to feed tumors, quercetin comes in directly and blocks that because the effect it has on mast cells, there's a lot of mast cell inflammatory activity happening when cancer is getting a blood vessel network built to it that quercetin blocks. It also lowers uric acid. So it's another major thing, and it's anti-estrogenic. And then that's coming to the source. I have numerous handouts that I can email to people. So I've got, this has always been a really great guide. It's called the Cliff Notes Guide to Nutrition and Cancer. It was written by Mark Bricka, who worked with Donnie Yance for many years. It's a great guide to just the Mediterranean diet and food. So I like that a lot. My Let's Get Cultured, Understanding the Biome paper is a very, very good one. And then I've got a one, if people are undergoing chemotherapy, is how things that you can do to make chemotherapy work better. I did the paper on immunotherapy is another one. I have one called Rules by How Cancer Behaves. So all these papers I can email to you. I can just send everybody a group thing with a lot of these handouts, which I have my library on it. And then Madiri did one on really focusing on groups of foods and what they do, which you can't see very well, but it's on the lower end here. Another very, very handy tool that can be supportive. But that's the summary of everything. So thank you very much for hanging in there with me. Okay. I don't know if we have any questions or anything. All right. Good. Yeah, there's a list right over here, and I think we had another one that Lawrence had.